Hi, and welcome back. Let's talk about the different levels of participation with the cash tracking system. This is not to be confused with levels as they pertain to multi-level marketing. These are simply different options for people to participate in our program. As you know by now, there are 3 different levels of participation here: $500, $1,000, and $2,000. Accordingly, this creates 3 different potential entry options. People can begin at the $500 option, which is the lowest level of participation. Starting at the $1,500 option simply adds the $500 and the $1,000 levels together. And the $3,500 entry option adds all 3 amounts together, $500, $1,000, and $2,000, which allows people to participate at all 3 levels. Now, when people are considering which option would best suit them, that's typically dictated by 3 things. First, how much cash they want to receive, and number 2, the financial resources that are available to them, and third, their tolerance for risk. Now let's review each one of these. First, let's talk about how much cash they want to receive. Remember, you can only receive cash at the levels that you are personally participating at. This one becomes a no-brainer. Everyone wants to receive $3,500. Well, what about that second item, the financial resources available to them? This is a little bit more puzzling. Many people that I initially thought would not be in a position to enter at the $3,500 entry option, even though they wanted to, surprised me by arranging the funding almost immediately. Statistically, of the 3 entry options we mentioned, most new members who join CTS do enter at the $3,500 entry option. Here's the reason for this, and I want to make sure this point is crystal clear. The fundamental rule with the cash tracking system is that no one can receive any cash, nor can they benefit from anything such as receiving a qualifier at any level that they are not personally participating at. That means if someone enters at the $1,500 entry option, for example, remember that's adding the $500 and the $1,000 levels together, and the first person that joins through their personal invitation wants to enter at the $3,500 entry option, they get qualified at the $500 and the $1,000 levels, but not at the $2,000 level, simply because they're not yet participating at that $2,000 level, so they're not eligible to receive that qualifier. If they then invite another person who joins at the $3,500 entry option, they would receive the $500 and the $1,000 since they're now qualified at those levels, but again, not the $2,000, nor would they have that person count as a qualifier for them at the $2,000 level. It is only when they decide to join the $2,000 level and they have forwarded their $2,000 pledge to their inviter can they receive benefit from anyone joining at that level. It's very consistent, very fair, and equal for everyone. So if someone is participating at the $1,500 entry option and they invite a new member who joins at the $3,500 option, who receives the $2,000? You've probably already figured out that the $2,000 would go to that member's inviter, presuming, of course, that the inviter is qualified at the $2,000 level. This is the process that we call roll-up. To review your understanding of that concept, I'd like to use a real-life example of specifically how roll-up occurs. James in Ohio is one of my people who joined at the $500 entry option. In his first month, James had 5 new people join in this order: $3,500, $500, $3,500, $1,500, and $3,500. All of that cash in excess of $500 after the first pledge rolled up to me. Had James joined at $3,500 after the first pledge, everything would have gone to him. Boy, that's a lot of cash that he missed. But it's actually much worse than it looks. Those last three people that joined at $3,500 and the $1,500 entry options are also on my $1,000 and $2,000 receiving lines instead of his, and they have produced additional cash for me from their qualifiers, which again would have gone to James had he joined at the $3,500 entry option. Now this could inevitably turn out to be $40,000, $60,000, or more that will end up going to me that would have gone to James had he simply entered at the $3,500 entry option. Now ask yourself this question. Would it have been worth it for James to go outside of his comfort zone and really get creative to find the extra $3,000? You bet it would. In this day and age, that really isn't terribly difficult for most people to do if they really want to. And there are literally thousands of stories like this one. Once people fully understand this concept, it's amazing how creative they can become to find the necessary funding. They have used cash advances from their credit cards. They've borrowed from a bank or friends or family. They've cashed in investments. They've sold things they no longer needed. They've borrowed from their pension funds, etc. I even had one lady who actually borrowed the money from her ex-husband. She told him that once she got this activity going, he could stop sending her those monthly support payments. I think he broke the land speed record getting over to her house with his checkbook. You see, when it comes to finding the funding, you're only limited by your creativity. Now, for me personally, I wasn't about to let $3,500 stand between me and the tens of thousands of dollars I knew I could receive every month with this incredibly powerful wealth-building system. Now let's talk about that third item, their tolerance for risk. This is another curious one, which was the key to my joining immediately at the $3,500 level. You see, my tolerance for risk is much lower these days since I'm approaching retirement age. But when I really did a thorough risk-reward analysis of this opportunity, it became immediately apparent that the risk here was extremely low. When I looked around and saw all of the average people that were receiving tons of cash here, most of them with no special skills or experience, I thought about, well, what's the worst thing that can happen to me? From a practical standpoint, I felt very confident with the system that's in place. I could certainly get my qualifier without too much difficulty, and perhaps get one or two new members to generate some cash and get some of those receiving lines going. Then if I just didn't like it for any reason, I'd be a little cash ahead and I'd just go do something else, and perhaps still receive some cash in the future from those receiving lines I created. You see, the risk was so low, but the potential upside was so high, I just had to do it. And the rest, as they say, is history. I've been enjoying this remarkable program since the spring of 2004, and I intend to continue to do so for the rest of my working life. Now, the entry option was obvious for me as well. There was no chance that I was willing to leave any cash on the table, so I entered at the $3,500 entry option. And since then, I've become totally financially free, and we now pay cash for everything. I work only about 15 hours or so a week, and I have all the time I want to spend with my family and my friends. But I really think the driving force behind my success and that of my group here is the lead generation systems we have in place. Using these resources, I always have plenty of people to talk to, and this requires absolutely none of my personal involvement to find these people. We then simply spend a few minutes on the phone together, which in most cases leads to them reviewing this website in detail. I let the presentations on this site do the explaining for me, and people simply decide whether this makes sense for them or not. No convincing or beating anyone into submission to do anything. It's really a very gentle process that just about anyone can do. I trust you've enjoyed the time we shared together today, and I truly hope we have the privilege of welcoming you as a new member with the cash tracking system. But remember, thinking about doing something accomplishes absolutely nothing. It's only by taking action and taking action right now that you can change your financial situation. Your next action step is to proceed to step 5, where you'll learn what makes this remarkable program so successful. Click the link at the bottom of this page to begin that presentation.